Let me start today's webinar. So today we will discuss about the importance of the institutional arrangement. A lot of you are asking in the last webinar that institutional arrangement is the important thing that everyone needs to be in your country have to set up to follow the UNFCCC policy guideline and continuously submitting the reporting BURs and national communications and the future BTR. So it is a great chance to hear that today we have an opportunity to hear the national focal point and the UNFCCC member Sin Liang and his team, Mr. Wan and Miss Winnie is here. So we have a two presentation from today, and in between we have also Mentimeters and the group photo session. So first of all, I will handle to my colleagues and dear friend Susan to start the introduction about the our CBIT GSP. You are already aware, but just mere 2-3 minutes. And after that, we will start Mentimeters and group photo. So be ready about and clean your cameras. And so Susan, it's
Yes,
up to you.
thank you so much, Paul. Thank you. And also from my side, a very warm welcome to this webinar and many, many greetings from Copenhagen. I'm based here in Copenhagen at the UNIP Copenhagen Climate Center. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Susanne Conrad and I'm a project officer here. And together with my colleague Fatima Sarah Taibi, who cannot be here today, we coordinate the global CBGSP project. So CBGSP, as you already know, stands for Capacity Building Initiative for Transparency Global Support Project. It's a really long name. And some of you probably also have joined the kickoff meeting in March or February when it was. And yes, so we coordinate 10 different transparency networks, basically covering all countries around the globe. And yeah, we are very lucky to have Japal as the network coordinator for the Asia Transparency Network in the region. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here at this experience sharing webinar on a very important topic, namely institutional arrangements for transparency. And it was a very interesting case from Singapore. Really looking forward to hear about it. And yeah, as you all know, just to highlight it again, institutional arrangements are the precondition for every functioning national transparency system. It includes various elements such as data sharing agreements, MOUs, systems and tools, transparency units, etc. So it's basically the underpinning structure of every national transparency system, which enables the flow of data from the different actors in the system. And we, of course, going to hear more about it from our Singapore colleagues. In the CBGSP project, we also provide support for institutional arrangements to countries, for instance, by conducting an assessment of institutional arrangements and providing recommendations on how to improve them. But we can also provide other targeted support in this area. So please always reach out to us, and there's dedicated support for request form, which you've probably already seen. So please be in touch if you think you need some dedicated support in that area. Yes, and it's also very important to highlight that in the upcoming biannual transparency report, countries need to report on their institutional arrangements for all the different areas of the ETF. So the national inventory process, but also for tracking of the NDC, for tracking adaptation impact, loss and damage, and the support needed and received, even though they are voluntary, the latter two. So it's not only about setting up an institutional arrangement, but also to report on that. So that's something to bear in mind for the upcoming BTR next year. But this webinar is really about establishing institutional arrangements, which is really comprehensive and daunting task for every country. Really, it's a really complex thing to tackle. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing from our colleagues from Singapore, who gratefully agreed to share their experiences and lessons learned with all our colleagues here today, and really looking forward to it. And please always feel free to reach out to us, to either to me, Susanne, Fatima Sarah, or to Jaipal if you have any questions or comments or needs that need to be filled. Thank you so much. To you, Jaipal.
Thank you so much, Susan, for the introductory remark. So I think we have to start. So let's start first with the group photo. So please turn on your camera and give me a good smile. Yes. Let me wait 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, still coming. Yes. Let me take first shot. Okay, just wait a 2 seconds. Okay, so now we will start the Mentimeter exercise. So I will request you to, I will post the link here in the chat box. So directly you can go through a Mentimeter. Here it is. Yes, some people are waiting. Let me. Okay. So you can click the link and I will also share it here. You can also scan this code in your mobile, or maybe you can just open the Menti and enter the code. Okay, now people I think online. So let me start the first question. So where are you joining us today from? Where are you? Which country? Okay, we are starting to getting answers. Okay, Singapore, India, and Denmark is first. Yes, okay. Afghanistan, Cambodia. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, I think Najib, you have raised the hand. It is by mistake, or you have want to some problem in Mentimeter? Okay, I think is by mistake. Let me start the second question. So when you hear the word institutional arrangement, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Okay, now people is thinking, what is the first word? Yeah, we are getting answers. Meetings. Yes, meeting with the all stakeholders, experts of your country. Greenhouse gas inventory. Yes, it is the most important part. Difficult, yeah. Complex, yes. Okay. Yeah, still getting some answer. Policies. Okay. Okay, the last question is, what is the greatest challenge in establishing institutional arrangement for transparency in your country? I think some all of the country have some type of institutional arrangement, but maybe they have to robust or strengthen the current existing system. So we have one answer. Human resource, yes. Coordination, manpower, yep. Yes, I think this question will help our first presenter scene to understand what are the problems. Lack of policy, regulation, coordination. Yes, I think coordination is the major issue for all of the Asian countries. Okay, so I think after two presentation, we will start again to hear your feedback about the presentations and two presentations and the webinar experience. So let me stop here, and now I will invite our dear friend Sin Liang to start the first presentation. So he will start give you about the importance about the institutional arrangement in the Singapore and the all benefits and how they are working in the Singapore. He is a national focal point in Singapore and also a UNFCCC member. So from the Asia region, so he has lots of experience about the climate change and everything that you are hearing about the BTRs and all the things. So do not hesitate to ask any type of question. I can understand people are uh, not ask in English or language, but you can ask in any just a word or maybe any just type in a chat box also. We will consider and try to answer your as per as possible. So thank you for joining us today, and let me start with welcome to Mr. Sin Lian. Now floor is yours. I will say the presentation.
Thank you very much, Japal Singh. Hello everyone, and it's a pleasure for me to give the first presentation for this webinar. Just by a way of introduction, my name is Sin Liang Cheah. I'm the Deputy Director for Global Partnerships under the National Climate Change Secretariat, which is a part of under the Prime Minister's office in Singapore. And the role of the National Climate Change Secretariat is essentially to coordinate climate change policies across the government agencies. So, but maybe I'll talk a bit more about the Secretariat's role in one of my last few slides when I show you the org chart and then I talk through some of the roles. So, you know, I've been in the climate change process for, well, more than 10 years now. So I've also seen a fair bit of the evolution of Singapore's institutional arrangements and climate policy. So happy to have this opportunity. Before I go into the content of the presentation, I guess I also have to confess that when Japal Singh first asked me to speak on this subject, my first reaction is that there really isn't a lot for me to say about Singapore's institutional arrangements. It won't take more than 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, it is really a very simple structure, but nonetheless, I hope that it will be useful to you. And if there are any questions, happy to try and answer them to the best of my ability. With that, let me just run through the first few slides very quickly. Next slide, please. So just to give a very quick context of Singapore, as usual, I mean, it's useful to give a context in terms of our national circumstances. We are a very dense urban landscape with high population density and, with a small land size of 723 square kilometers, where we need to basically, accommodate our housing, commercial centers, air, seaports, recreation, places of business. It is very challenging for us in terms of, looking for ways to, reduce our emissions and also to, undertake adaptation efforts as well. And one of the key challenges we face is also that given our small land size, our geography is not suitable and low lying, flat, geography. There's no hydro, there's no geothermal. Solar is probably our most, available form of renewable, but also that's limited by intermittency and our land constraints. And one thing we've done is that we've shifted away from fuel oils to natural gas very early on, whereby right now our electricity energy mix is made up of more than 95% from natural gas. Next slide, please. And nonetheless, we'll be moving very quickly to try and do our part for global climate action. We've submitted our 2030 NDC. We've updated it twice. We've also submitted our long-term strategy in March 2030, and we've also updated our strategy with a goal to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so these are a snapshot of some of the mitigation plans across the sectors that we are working towards achieving our NDC. So, given the fact that renewable is very limited, we are really pushing hard on energy efficiency, through energy efficiency grants, solar deployment, looking at helping our households to shift towards more energy efficient equipment, and then also to shift away from internal combustion engine vehicles towards EVs and things like that. I see a question asking which country am I from. I'm from Singapore. Yeah, so thanks for the question. Next slide, please. Yeah, one of the key measures that we've taken also is that we implemented a carbon tax since 2019 to put a price tag on externality of carbon. I think we are the first country in Southeast Asia to do so. Our carbon tax covers about 80% of our emissions, and in 2022 we also announced plans to progressively raise the carbon tax to 50 to 80 Singapore dollars, which works up to be about US 36.9 to US $59 per ton by 2030. Next slide, please. And at the same time, we also undertake, resilience efforts essentially our adaptation efforts, whereby we deal with issues such as the urban heat effect, building up our coastal protection against rising sea levels, dealing with food security and public health, etc. Next slide, please. And in terms of transparency efforts, I mean, first of all, I think I have to say that there is no one-size-fits-all approach, to whether it is in terms of institutional arrangements or transparency efforts and all that, because it really depends on your national circumstances. So for Singapore, I think we have a fairly simple inventory, which makes it fairly, I wouldn't say it's easy, but that is simpler than a country which has many different sectors or many regions or cities that they have to go and coordinate with in order to even to compile the national inventory. So in Singapore's context, we've submitted 5 biennial update reports, 5 national communications, and we are currently undergoing the ICA process for the 5th BUR. And we are starting to prepare for to submit our first biennial transparency report by end of 2024. That said, I think we are still very much a work in progress, in terms of our transparency efforts. So some of the key areas we are working on including our emissions from the agriculture sector. We don't have a large, significant agriculture sector, but nonetheless, we are looking at trying to, provide more granularity and more accuracy in our estimations. We are recalculating our GHG time series. We are including new sectoral reporting tables, enhancing our LULUCF reporting, developing our emissions inventory for HFCs based on Tier 2 methodologies. And this is really something that we've only started over the last few years to work on. And I think one of the key challenges we face is also to be able to work at trying to understand how the differences in terms of our reference versus sectoral data, why is it different? But I think it's always a challenge because of Singapore's huge trade volumes versus our own domestic production. Next slide, please. And okay, so this is really the meat of my presentation, our institutional arrangements. So at the top of the framework or arrangement is really that there is an interministerial committee on climate change, which is chaired by a senior minister. So this interministerial committee includes ministers from all the key ministries that have significant role to play in terms of climate change. So we have the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Trade Industry, Ministry of National Development, Ministry of Transportation, we basically, and then all the various statutory boards that report to the ministries. So they're all represented at this ministerial committee that meets, about two times a year or so, where it takes the high-level decisions in terms of, any key decisions relating to climate change. So that includes things such as, for instance, setting our NDC targets, our long-term strategy, looking at our transparency arrangements to make sure that they are in line with international expectations, looking at communications efforts, looking at resilience efforts. So it's basically a high-level platform whereby the different ministries can talk and then to work out what the pros and cons are, and then to explore trade-offs if necessary. So one thing that I find quite useful is the fact that the senior minister that chairs over this interministerial committee is more senior than the other ministers. So in a way, he is a first among equals, and he is able to provide a bit more of a political push, in terms of driving the discussions, and then hopefully working towards a whole of government outcome, right? So that I think is quite important, and I think that could possibly be contrasted with, for instance, if some other government whereby it is just one ministry, whether it is the economy ministry or the sustainability or environment ministry, trying to coordinate across other ministries. So sometimes I think that can be a lot challenging. So I think having a platform whereby all the ministers can discuss among themselves and then to take a whole of government decisions, I think has been very helpful for us. So looking below that, we have an executive committee that's made up of all the permanent secretaries of these ministries. So they take the more whatever key decisions that go to the ministers would have to go through them first as well. So there's some opportunity for them to work the ground and then to sort out the less critical issues, right? And below that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 working groups. One on long-term emissions and mitigation, one on resilience, one on sustainability, one on green economy, and the last one on communications and engagement working groups. So these are 4 working groups that are made up of the officials, the senior officials of the different relevant ministries working on various issues. So I think that the names are quite self-explanatory, right? Resilience looks at adaptation efforts. Sustainability looks at the issues that the Ministry of Environment normally looks at. in terms of recycling, looking at zero waste, looking at various issues relating to the environment. The green economy looks at how we can really enable the Singapore to seize the growth opportunities from the green economy, and then to look at creating good jobs and opportunities in the sustainability sector. And the communications and engagement working group essentially looks also at the communication priorities to achieve greater whole of government coordination efforts. And increasingly, we are also looking not just at engaging the stakeholders such as the industry, the NGOs, civil society, but also the youth. So this is what we recognize as increasingly important. And I guess more pertinent to the issue of transparency under the long-term emissions. Also, anyway, the long-term emissions and mitigation working group essentially looks at our mitigation plans, whether it is for NDC or for our longer-term 2050 objectives. It works out our mitigation targets. It sets sectorial targets that each ministry would be responsible for monitoring and delivering on, and of course all that adds up into are all sort of measured in terms of domestic MAC curve, marginal abatement curve, whereby we stack up the measures and we ensure that collectively that they are able to meet our annual NDC targets, so that we can then achieve our NDC outcomes at the end of the period. So under the long-term emissions and mitigation working group, we have MRV task force, measurement, reporting and verification task force. So that group basically looks at all issues relating to transparency. So it looks at how we can further improve our reporting processes, our data collection processes, making sure that the reports, our biennial update reports, our ICA process, that all the arrangements are done properly, that agencies are on board and are supportive of the process. And below that, we have an interagency working group, which is essentially the group that handles the coordination of our preparation of our biennial update report and national communications. So they look at the editorial work, they make sure that different agencies are tasked to draft certain chapters of the biennial update report. They make sure that it's all nicely put together, coherent, and as a single product. So that's essentially our institutional arrangements in short, and so far I think it has worked fairly well for us. Next slide, please. Yeah, so coming to the end of my presentation, what I would suggest as my key takeaways for you is to say that there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Depending on your national circumstances, you may choose a different approach or a different way to shape your institutional arrangements. But I think from Singapore's experience, we have our structure, our framework seems to work. One of the key things it does is really that it makes sure that agencies have very regular checkpoints where the issues or problems or challenges or proposals are put forward, and then discussed across the government, and hopefully we then are able to come up with a whole of government solution rather than a very sectorial or ministry focused kind of solution. And now the other aspect is that we learn by doing and we improve over time. I mean, when we first started, we did, of course, we were very worried. Oh, are we sure that our our reporting would be fine, would we be criticized? But at the end of the day, we realize that just learn by doing and improve. Yeah, and I would say that the MRV transparency obligations under the UNFCCC are designed to be facilitative and non-punitive. So no one is out to name and shame or to embarrass us, whether it's in terms of the quality of our report or the quality of our responses under the ICA process, right? So, but I do want to make a gentle reminder is that that under the Paris Agreement, we are all required to submit our first biennial transparency report by this end of December 2024. And if we do not do so, this will actually trigger Article 15 committee proceedings under the Paris Agreement, whereby we would then be, the country concerned will be highlighted as not having met its obligation under the Paris Agreement. So my suggestion is do the best you can, submit whatever information you can, and learn by doing, but submit something. Don't submit nothing by the December 2024, or else it's not ideal. It doesn't give build confidence for the Paris Agreement's transparency framework. So that is my key suggestion to you. And for in terms of, and as I said as well, our interministerial coordination process is helpful in terms of being able to allow all the ministries to sit together and work out a whole of government approach. Right, so that to me is useful. And for my last point to you would be to say that there is support for your capacity building, for transparency efforts. The consultative group of experts under the UNFCCC, is available to assist all of us in terms of whether it is building capacity on various fronts, and not just the CGE, but also partners such as the UNDP, the GSP process, whereby there are many tools and mechanisms that are available to assist all of us in our transparency efforts. So with that, I would end my presentation. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you so much, Sin Liang, for the very informative presentation. So I am expecting that people are ready for question and answer. So before starting the second presentation, we will take some questions. If you have any type of small, big, very small question, you can ask. You can just unmute your mic and you can speak, or if you are not comfortable, then you can just write it in the chat box. Okay, I think institutional management is a very heavy word. Okay, so yes, we have one question from Ravneet. Yes, Ravneet, you can speak.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I just wanted to ask, on the working group that you mentioned, the 5 working groups that you have, is it only the government ministries that are members of the working group, or is there also private sector stakeholders in that?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. The answer is it's only government agencies that are involved in all of these committees. As and when necessary, we may, under exceptional circumstances, like invite private sector or academics to give presentations to our committees. and but by and large they are not members of these working groups. But that said, these working groups do engage in stakeholder consultations, whether it's in terms of, for instance, in terms of the mitigation agenda. We work very closely with researchers, with think tanks, with industry representatives to shape our various policies as and when necessary, where it makes sense. But we don't have them as regular participants or observers for our discussions, because these are internal to the government. So that would be my answer. Thank you.
Yes, Elizabeth, you have raised your hand.
Yes, thank you. I have a very simple question to Sin Liang. First of all, congratulations. I think you are only the two countries that have submitted 5 BURs. That's really impressive, I would say. And my question is, what was the driving force for Singapore to successfully submit every 2 years your BURs? That's the first question. And second question is what's the duration or time frame you need to complete your BUR, say 1 BUR? So it takes how long to complete?
Yeah.
And then
Thanks.
Ready for submission. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Elizabeth, and good to hear your voice. Looking forward to seeing you in Bonn. Well, what's the driving force? I guess we, as Singapore, I think first of all, let me try and try and give you my frankest answer possible. I think we just followed our instructions. We were told, oh, okay, biennial update reports every 2 years you're supposed to submit. So that was the time frame that we have been working towards. So and frankly, the overall process I think takes about less than a year. From the time that the committee, the interagency committee, convenes its first meeting, usually in January or February, until the document is approved towards October, November period. I think it's only that period. I think one of the advantages I think we have is the fact that we do everything in-house. We don't engage consultants to do the work for us. So the interagency committee basically parcels out the different chapters. We update previous versions of our biennial update reports to with the latest information, but we have the framework, the outline that is there. So I think that makes it a little bit more automated. The only thing that we outsource is really to get a commercial agency to lay out the paragraphs and photos to make them look a bit more presentable, more like a publication. But I think once you've done 1 or 2 BURs, it's fairly automated, I would say. And I think from the GHG inventory side of things, I mean, we have a very simple inventory. So I think it also makes the job a lot easier in terms of trying to make sure that we get the data in. But I'll leave it to my colleagues, Winnie and Lek Kong, to share more about the technical process, especially from the inventory perspective.
Okay, so last question is from Sri Lanka. What is the institutional arrangement for data sharing for the national communication in Singapore? So maybe she's trying to ask about what is the data management, how you collect, store, analyze, and process.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect question for me to segue to the next presentation, by Winnie, who will be able to go into more details on that aspect of it, the GHG data management part of it. So if there are no any questions, I thank all of you for your time, and I hope that this has been useful.
Thank you. Thank you, Sin. Thank you so much for your informative presentation and all the answers that you have given. So maybe we will start with the next round of presentation. I will request colleague from Winnie from Singapore National Environment Agency to share your press screen, and the floor is yours. Thank you. Yes, Winnie, we can see your presentation in full screen mode.
Sorry, I didn't unmute.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon and good morning, everyone. I'm Winnie from the National Environment Agency. Basically, our team is working on mainly the Singapore's GHG inventory. So today we're invited to share a little bit about our institutional arrangement for reporting of our GHG inventory in the biannual update reports, which would also actually be the same as how we will be doing it for the BTR, coming BTR. So for today, we will actually cover 3 parts, but the main thing would be the second one. So we'll just briefly go through the first and the third one later on. Yeah, so on the reporting of greenhouse gas emissions in Singapore, basically as what just now Sin Liang has presented, we have submitted our 5th BUR last year, and so this is actually based. So for Singapore, we follow closely to the COP decision. So at COP 17 in 2011, so it's decided that non-Annex 1 parties shall submit a BUR every 2 years. So since the year 2014, as you can see in this diagram here, we have been submitting our first BUR from 2014 all the way to 2022, yeah, which is our 5th BUR. Yeah. So for the inventory part, so the decision mentioned that that the calendar year should be no more than 4 years prior to the date of submission. So as what we have reported, it is X-4. Yeah. So all this decision can actually be found in CP17 decision 2. So it's available there, and we'll move on to the next slide. So for our greenhouse gas emissions, apart from reporting it in the BUR, which will then flow to BTR next year, we also actually use it for other publications, such as the key environment statistics, which is published annually. Yeah. So the coverage of our GHG emissions includes all the IPCC sector. As what Sin Liang has mentioned just now, for Singapore, we do not have many cities. We only have 1 city. So I guess that streamlines a little bit better than in other countries. Yeah, so basically for these 4 sectors, the source categories are as reflected in this table are such as what we have reported in our BUR. So moving on to the institutional arrangement for our GHG inventory. So basically, the preparation of the national GHG inventory involves many government agencies. Yeah, so who coordinates with relevant stakeholders. So it could be like from private companies, or it could be companies that are legislated under regulations. Yeah, so so the various government agencies will actually gather the data, and with that, then they will send it actually to the National Inventory Compiler, which is actually our agency, which is called the National Environment Agency, NEA in short. Yeah, so the diagram here actually shows an overview of a 4-stage GHG inventory preparation process. So I will elaborate more on each stage in the subsequent slides. So for stage 1, basically includes the QA/QC for the collection and compilation of data, where most of our data is compiled through legislation and surveys administered by various government agencies. Yeah, so this table actually shows the agencies that are involved in the particular source category of the IPCC sector. So you can see from this table, the energy industries is actually, we gather the data source from Energy Market Authority, PUB, which is our Singapore's national water agencies. Yeah, and for example, the transport side, yeah, so for marine transport, we actually gather from Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore. Yeah. So moving on to the IPPU side, for example, we do have legislations to actually collect information under the carbon pricing, and before that was the Energy Conservation Act. Yeah, so this are some of the regulations that help us to gather data, yeah, and to be able to report it in our inventory. And as for agriculture, we have Singapore Food Agency. And for LULUCF sector, it would be the National Parks Board. Yeah, so we have various agencies, government agencies actually looking into the various data sources. Yeah. Yeah, so moving on, so for stage 1, we also do quality control checks conducted by the data owners, which is the government agency. So we do strongly emphasize on QA and QC processes. Yeah, so before the agencies, the government agencies actually send us the data, we do encourage them to conduct their QA and QC before they send it to us. So usually the QA, for example, for the data, it's being collected and verified by an independent team within each agency, yeah, which is not involved in the data collection and compilation process. And for the QC of the data, actually you can see at the right-hand side, there's this list of QC activities that is being conducted by the various government agencies. Yeah, so this is actually available in the IPCC guidelines. So you can actually also refer or rather extract the list of these QC activities from the IPCC guidelines. So moving on to stage 2, the QC checks would be conducted by persons who are not involved in the inventory emissions computation. So previously is QA/QC is being conducted by the various government sectors. So when it comes to us as the inventory compilers, we will actually gather all this data source and do computation to obtain the final GHG emissions. So as we do that, we also conduct another level of the QC within our own team. So by someone else who is not probably doing the computation of this particular emission stream. Yeah, and after we have done that, we'll do a QA. So we'll get another team within the agency, but from another department to do a check on our computation. So it's kind of like a 2-level check. Yeah, so that's for stage 3, and stage 4 finally would be the endorsement of our GHG inventory by the MRV task force. So they will review the quality, the QA/QC procedures of the agencies, and then finally they will endorse our national GHG inventory. Yeah, so basically, yeah, all in all, it's kind of might not be as that complex as compared to probably other countries because of the scale of our GHG inventory. So finally, on the UNFCCC review processes, so as what just now Sin Liang has mentioned, the MRV task force will actually be the task force that will be looking at the whole ICA review process. Yeah, so while we compile this BUR, we actually go through this process, which currently we have already reached the part for our BUR 5 would be at the stage of the TASR, as you can see from this diagram. Yeah, so the TASR as in the technical analysis and summary report. Yeah, so the next stage would be FSB. That will likely take place a few months later, either in COP or next year's bond session. Yeah, so I think that is more or less what I have. And the key takeaways is for today's presentation, I would like to summarize would be a strong strong institutional arrangement will definitely increase the transparency, accuracy, and completeness, consistency of our national GHG inventory. Yeah, as I think each agency really needs to take ownership of the data that they have and to really like cooperate in producing the data to the inventory, the national inventory compiler. I think that would be extremely helpful for the national inventory compilers. But it's also important to also note that through this few rounds or many years of compilation of the national inventory, we also noted that there's extensive effort required actually by all data owners to actually recalculate if there are changes to the methodologies. Yeah, and it's also crucial to document all the methodologies and computation required so that it will be easier for the team that or new members that comes in, you know, to do the compilation of the national inventory to know how it is actually being done. Yeah, and the last point that I'd like to highlight would be it is necessary to constantly build up technical capability even for ourselves, for our team to continuously improve our national GHG inventory. Yeah, so I think with that, I've ended the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Winnie. Thank you, Winnie, for detailed and informative presentation specific to greenhouse gas inventory preparation for the continuous national communications and the BUR. So I think the floor is open for question and answer. You can directly ask to Winnie or you can post it to the chat box. I think the institutional arrangement for the greenhouse gas inventory is the major part. People, you are, I think, heard about that. Inventory management system is a kind of institutional arrangement for continuously collecting and processing, analyzing and reporting the data for the all gases and all the sectors of the IPCC guidelines. So you can understand that from the Singapore, they are every 2 years they are submitting BUR. So as Singh told that they take only 1 year to report, because once you prepared one BUR and second BUR, you are kind of aware that this is the requirement, this is the arrangement that you have to set up in your country according to your national circumstances. So still waiting for hearing any voice. Yes, Ravnit. Thank you. Please ask your question to Winnie.
Thank you, Winnie, for that wonderful presentation. I just wanted to know on the data providers that you have, how does the climate change team they ensure the capacity building to these data providers? Because from my understanding, it would be that these people would change over time. So how often do you provide some kind of trainings or some kind of awareness sessions? Or yeah, just wanted to understand that. Thanks.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the question. So for capacity building for the data owners, I mean, if there's any opportunities that is helpful, like for example, I think UNFCCC they do have or rather the GHG Institute Management Institute they do offer I think sectorial training sessions. So with that, we will actually send it to the data owners. Yeah. So it's for the option to actually attend to build up their knowledge. So these are some when we receive news of this courses that are available, we will actually forward those to them, and they do attend those, which I think it's really helpful for the officers that are in charge of the data.
Thank you, Winnie. Thank you, Ravneet. So next question is from the Brunei. Is verification of greenhouse gas inventory is a yearly process for Singapore or it is a biennially process?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the verification of GHG inventory, similar to our data compilation, it's an annual process. So as the data owners compile it yearly, as we gather it yearly, we will actually conduct the QA and QC process as it's an ongoing process, I would say. Yeah.
So is there anyone want to ask the question? Yes, so Najib from Afghanistan, does Singapore use UNFCCC technical and financial support for preparation of national report submitting to the UNFCCC? So I think it's we want to ask something that are you taking support from any international organization like JEF or GCF or kind of for the preparation of NCBUR and future BTR?
So far we haven't we don't receive any financial support, but for like the offer of capacity building courses on this such technical support, I would think so. Yeah, we do participate in all these sessions.
Yeah.
The answers.
So I think it's the last question from Najib. So thank you, Winnie, thank you for detailed presentation of the greenhouse gas inventory and how institutional arrangement that you have set up in the Singapore. So let's go for the final round of Mentimeter. So I am again posting the link of the Mentimeter in the chat box. You just have directly click and you can go through a Mentimeter. Just open the chat box. I will save the present Mentimeter here. Okay, so voting is started for our next question. What other areas would you like to see in the next experience sharing webinar? So this is our second webinar and we are planning to more round of webinar in the next month after the June session. So if you want to any specific topic that you want to learn or understand from any specific country also that you can mention it here. Yes, we are starting to receiving answers and the first, yes, NDC tracking. Greenhouse gas inventory, yes. So I think two main chapter of the mandatory requirement of the BTR is covered. Yeah, GH inventory process, GH inventory NDC tracking. Yes, I can understand. So we are also available for any particular, like in the NDC tracking also, if you like to understand how you can identify the indicators, how you can develop indicators, platform, something like that. We are also available to provide support. So you know you have my email ID, you can just write one email, one line email is also enough for me. But just write and just ask whatever is the support requirement in your country. Okay, let's move to the next question. Please tell us about the webinar. This is all confidential. We do not know who is answering what question. So you can frankly speak what you think about the today's webinar. Yes, thank you for answers. Okay, let's move to the next question. I think it is the final. What aspect of the webinar would you like to improve next time? Is there anything specific regarding the presentations or anything like any more presentation you need or some interactive presentation or something, anything you want to tell, you can tell us here. So we can improve ourselves in the next round of webinars. I think we are perfect. No need to.
Always be honest with us. We we take any critique.
Yeah. Yes, specifically on how institutional arrangement process. Maybe how to set up the institutional arrangement from the scratch to the level. I think that's the maybe they want to understand two countries sharing experience about the one topic, maybe. Yeah. Yes, so that you can, and you can also be a part of the webinar. So it's not like a limited participation. You are also always welcome to participate, share your experience about your country. Okay, I think it's Thursday, not Friday. Why people are not responding? Okay, yeah. Global stock taking and the lesson learned. Yes, this year is the first year of global stock take. Yeah, we can link this global stock take with the greenhouse gas inventory and NDC tracking. Okay, now we are ending the presentations and the webinar. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's very useful that you all guys have taken time and participate and ask the question. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for Singapore to present the detailed information about their country, and all participants for attending the event and asking the question. Thank you, Suzanne, for attending the today's webinar. So if anyone has a question, you can ask, or we will close this event. We will meet in the next round of webinar in the end of June or starting of July. Thank you. Thank you, Amjad.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. We will be in touch, and please feel free to reach out to us, to Japan, or to us here in Copenhagen. Thanks a lot, and thanks to Singapore, of course. Thanks a lot. Have a good afternoon, good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.